welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. Two things come up regularly in these podcasts. Firstly, a life in hospitality, food or drink, is very often a second or maybe even a third career. I'm thinking of Rupert Holloway at Conker Gin, who gave up surveying to set up his own distillery, or maybe Claire Burnet at Chococo swapping marketing for freshly made chocolates. Now, as the winner of the Formula One World Championship in 1979, this week's guest, Jody Scheckter, certainly knows a thing or two about a very different career. And secondly, obsession. Maybe William Curley creating the very best chocolates, or Jethro Tenant and his obsession about sea salt. Jody certainly takes things to the extreme. He started with such a simple idea: how to find the very best, tastiest, healthiest food for his family. That simple seed of an idea has taken Jody on an incredible adventure, learning the most phenomenal amount about every stage from seed to plate. In fact, before the seed, Jody and his team of biologists and chemists spent 8 years just researching the soil. As he says, everything we eat that does not come from the sea at some point came from the soil. So if you have an obsessive nature of striving for the best and of always winning, that is the natural place to start. As the founder of Laverstoke Park Farm, Jody Scheckter is known for his commitment to biodynamic and organic farming, and his herd of water buffalo, which provide the milk for award-winning mozzarella and ice cream. Laverstoke Park Farm has also diversified into hops and ale, sparkling wine and even black pudding. While these products are varied, the vision underpinning them is always the same: to be the best tasting and healthiest without compromise. Jody and Laverstoke Farm also just happen to host Chris Evans' Carfest every year and have raised over £1.5 million for charity. He even gets to bring the Ferrari he won the World Championship in onto his farm to enjoy the occasion. I very much hope you enjoy this week's conversation. Jody Scheckter, thank you so much for sparing the time to be on the podcast this morning. Very much appreciated. Can you just explain to people listening where on planet Earth are we, please, Jody? I can see sheep.
Hampshire. We're in Hampshire, halfway between Southampton and London. Beautiful place, 1 hour from London.
Yeah. And this is your farm? This is where it all happens? This
is the farm that all happens, yeah. My house is on that side of the farm.
Okay. Pointing right to people who can't see you. We're going to dive. I'm excited to meet you, Jody, having done a little bit of research about your obsessive kind of nature on all things food and drink, from the soil to the food, but also your history, I guess, as an obsessive, which I'm guessing you must be, to win the Formula One Championship. But I'll start. What you're probably most famous for at the moment, I guess, is mozzarella and buffalo. Can you just talk to me a little bit about how many buffalo do you have here? Why buffalo? Because that's pretty unusual to see in the English countryside, I think. How did that come about?
Well, how do I produce the best tasting, healthiest food? We follow nature very strictly, and we have two main principles. One is slow-growing animals and plants are generally healthy and taste better, and biodiversity is a key to a healthy natural environment. And so I went to see some buffalo, really for more diversification.
Right.
And then I thought, well, I'm going to get the buffalo. I got the buffalo, and obvious thing to make was mozzarella, and then I bought several herds. I had 2,500 buffalo at one time.
Wow.
On other farms. Now we have under 1,000. We have 2 other farms milking for us, although we're going to bring that on site. We've just expanded our dairy. And then the factory, we went in and did a lot of research in Italy to do the most handmade mozzarella without having 2 Italians here. And so we bought the equipment, and actually outside the Ferrari factory, this Dima, which they made brilliant equipment, and took us a long time to get it consistent. There's so many little factors, and we're still working on it.
Which is amazing for one product, I think, isn't it? And I was saying this to you just before we started, but I love meeting people who have an obsession in a niche and just work on that one thing for so long.
I was very stupid. I had 109 products or 120 products at one stage going into Ocado, and I wanted to make everyone absolute. And then I had an artisan lady in the dairy, and she was doing all cheeses. We had nearly every cheese there, brie, and the brie with buffalo was brilliant sometimes. And we did cheddar, we did Gouda, we did. What you learn though very quickly is if you don't refine, you can make something, but if you don't refine it, you don't get a brilliant product. So now we concentrate on mozzarella and ricotta and the ones associated with that, and ice cream, buffalo ice cream, which is brilliant, but it's expensive.
I text my chef this morning to find out if we were still using some of your products, because I know we used to have your mozzarella and we don't have mozzarella on the menu at the moment, but his reply was their ice cream is the best ice cream you can get.
Whose ice cream?
Yours. Yeah, he loves it.
I always say that. I always challenge chefs. I said, that's where we make the best ice cream in the world.
Yeah, no,
and you can see them cringing like that. But, the thing is, we don't get a base and then put flavors in. Every one of ours are tweaked like this. So we'll do, I don't know, let's say 10 different chocolate ice creams, and then we get in and say, okay, that one's the best. And then we come, well, I want a little 2%, 4%, 6% more of that, 2% less than that, and that's how we develop our every ice cream is developed like that.
Yeah, amazing. And you mentioned some cheese, so the brie you don't do anymore. Is that to do with consistency? I remember interviewing Emma from Blue Vinny cheese, and she was like, almost every batch you make is a living kind of product. She was like, they've been doing it. Her granddad had set it up, I think, 60 years. And I was like, they still hadn't nailed the product. It was continually evolving. Is that the same with your products?
Yeah, I mean, what happened is I had a Dutch lady that was an artisan cheesemaker, and she did all these cheeses, nearly every cheese. So then when she left, I went in there, and it was a disaster, really. The processes weren't right. So I mean, with the brie, I went in there and I said, your brie's no good. And they were very unhappy that I'd just come in and interfered with them. So I said, okay, bring all the brie out like this. And the ones that were 2 weeks were more mature than the ones that were 3 months. And I threw half of them away because they weren't good enough to sell. And I think they got the idea. And that's when we started, one of my operations guy and I, we went in there and just refining, stopped all those other cheeses. We made brie for a while, and it was brilliant, but it wasn't a good product for us.
Right. And is mozzarella the same? Is it's a living thing that's difficult to get consistency, or is it not?
Yeah, we still don't understand it totally. There's no question. I'm doing a lot of development. Went down to a factory in Italy and got a lot of the finer points. We've got the flavor probably as good as they've got in Italy, in the best parts of Italy. Our texture's not quite there yet, but we will get there soon.
So what sort of stuff affects that? Because how long have you been making mozzarella?
Probably about 8 years.
8 years.
Something like that.
So, an obsession, I'm going to say, for 8 years and still tweaking it. What sort of stuff, what changes can you make that affect texture?
Well, the storage liquid is very, very critical. So and that's pH and salt. And that's very, very critical, because if you've got too low a pH, then it goes hard. And if you've got too little, it just disintegrates. So we've refined that. I've got alarms in there in case when we make it, because we made one batch and then we didn't see until the computer that it was the wrong pH. And we test 3 times a week. We test every batch until it's well over the best before date. So, and then after like 3 days, it was just, going soft. We looked at it, we had done the wrong pH, withdrew everything that we had done. And so now we have alarms in the factory. So immediately we get a pH that's going wrong, the alarms will come on.
Wow. I don't think consumers have any idea about the kind of the level of work that has to go into these products.
An incredible amount of small details.
Yeah. And would that be very different? I'm thinking of those little plastic pouches that you pick up in the supermarket. I don't want to make you angry so early in the interview, Jody, but those little...
that's what we do now.
Yeah? Okay, but in general, the stuff you pick up off the supermarket shelf, is that a very different product?
First of all, a lot of people don't understand. You've got cow's mozzarella and buffalo mozzarella, and that's a completely different product.
Yeah.
Cow's mozzarella is probably is more for pizzas. Mm-hmm. And then buffalo mozzarella is a different product. And I like it only with tomato, basil, some olive oil. See, a lot of the even the buffalo mozzarella has very little taste. So if you put it in a salad and put balsamic on it, well, you're only doing texture. You're not going to taste anything of the mozzarella. Mm. Yeah, I went on a program with James Martin where he came and looked how we do the buffalo and milk it and everything. And then part of it was go down to, and he would do something with it.
Right.
And so he cooked this thing, and I thought, this sauce which was made out of plums. And I thought, well, that'd be good for our ice cream. And then he did it, put some bacon around it, and it was terrible. and I couldn't say, wow, this is beautiful.
Right.
And I said, well, you try it. And he walked away. I thought he was going to come and hit me. but he's a good friend of mine. So
you can get away with it. I agree with you, though, that buffalo mozzarella, tomato, olive oil are just beautiful, especially if you happen to be sat in Italy in the sunshine with an icy cold beer at the same time.
Yeah, if you've got a good product. For me, in fact, in Italy, then that's a different product. Ours is a retail product, so it's got to last 15, 20 days.
Right.
Over there, they'll have a product that lasts 5 days.
Yeah.
So at the first 1, 2, maybe 3 days, they just have it as it is.
Right.
And then they start with the tomato, mozzarella, and what's. But that's a different product.
Okay. Presumably, some of the quality also comes back to what the buffalo are eating, doesn't it? So how far back through it for you to get the product that you're happy with, which I appreciate, having even only known you for 10 minutes, you're probably never going to be completely happy with. But yeah, how far back through the journey?
Well, when I started the whole thing, and I was very successful in America with a company that made simulators to train police, and that's how I could come here and do what I want to do. And so I started in the soil because in Formula One and you got to do I like to do every element myself so I can get it right. And so we started in the soil. And if you think everything we eat comes from the soil except from the sea, and we have things that healthy soil is healthy grass, healthy animals, healthy meat and milk, and healthy people. Can't be any different. And so I then looked around. I went around the world getting lectures, doing books. And so I got a doctor in microbiology, a doctor in chemistry. I had a full chemistry lab, 4 mass spectrometers. I could tell anything in anything, and I wanted to understand what was in the soil, what was in the grass, and how it went through. And the biology of the soil, biology is what makes the soil available to the plant, which very few farmers understand that. Because it's from the beginning of last century, it was all chemistry, but biology is becoming much more accepted and looked at by farmers, and so that's then. And the next thing was the grass. So diversity, which I said earlier, we have 31 herbs, clovers, and grasses in our grasses. Researched it and. Changed it, went really into books of the history, and there was a guy with 1908. He was the first one putting them all together. When we went to 25, and now we have 31. Changed them. There were studies in the mountains in Switzerland and Italy where some of the herbs made it better and some of it made it worse. So chucked some out, put some in, and then it's complicated. I thought Formula One was complicated, but nature is much, much more complicated.
I'm smiling because I love that obsession that you will, deliberately go out there and, change the makeup of the grass. Not enough farmers seem to start with that, do they? It's quite the opposite. It seems that
the sad part is it's all volume. Farming is volume, so you get paid for volume. So the more milk you can get out of a cow, and mostly water in a way, because a buffalo is an old type of cow. It's an old bovine, and so you get half the milk from it, but the milk has got twice as much of most things in. So it's a beautiful milk, but is it commercially good? Unless you're very specialized, which is mozzarella, you can make it work. But most of the products, if it's old varieties, they taste better. Maybe they don't last as long. Maybe they're not as pretty in the supermarket. But they don't get paid for that, You can't get an apple that goes bad in 3 days in a supermarket. They'll never sell it.
Yeah. So I'm very lucky because I get to go and interview a lot of people who share that kind of passion, I suppose, for grow it slowly, grow it properly, grow it traditionally. It should be about flavour and quality, and it shouldn't be about sort of mass production. We seem to have gone through a period over the last 30 years where it's all been about quantity and intensification. Do you feel
that's been an interesting thing, because I think, like, let's say 7-8 years ago, they talked about products but never did it, the chefs and stuff. I think that's become where they are using better products now, and it's important to have better products in general.
Yeah. So do you think we're going through a period of change positively? Is that intensification quantity over quality trajectory continue, or do you think we're on a genuine change?
No, I'm just in a general change from what I see is that they want good ingredients now where they said they did, and now they do take good ingredients and understand. Because I think the ingredients are the way you get the flavors.
Massively.
So if you put big sauces on something like the French do with bad meat, let's say, you tasting the sauces and not the product. Yeah. And I think most of the good chefs, they want you want to do very little to the product and let the produce be the flavor.
Yeah, massively. So if that's changing with the chefs, do you think that's rippling out to the consumer? Do you think the consumer is starting to understand the difference between cheap food and good food?
Must be to an extent. It must be.
Yeah, must be because.
Well, if the chefs are doing it, they're doing it because the public are accepting it and wanting it.
Yeah. Good. So. I hope so, because again, it's the point of having these conversations, I suppose, is trying to get the public to understand the difference between types of food and just be willing just to spend a little bit more.
Yeah, it's interesting how much the psychological idea of food, or anything for that matter, changes, because people think, wow, I'm going to a Michelin-star restaurant, it's going to be wonderful. You come out there and wow, I went to this Michelin-star and they have 3 stars and it's fantastic. Well, what did you enjoy there? Well, the experience. Would you go back for a certain plate? I'm not sure. I think it's that's the way it is.
Yeah, no, it's true. Just going back very quickly, so buffalo, you mentioned you had 2,500. Where did you go? I don't know the history of buffalo. Did you get them from the UK? Did you need to go abroad to import them?
Yeah, there was a guy that I went to see, the first guy I went to see, and he had a lot of buffalo. I bought his herd and hired him, and right. he knew a lot about buffalo, and so we bought another 4 or 5 herds.
Okay, this was a British chap?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so homegrown?
Yeah, okay. And mostly homegrown. And then we got some stuff from Italy, some bulls and stuff from Italy, and that's how it went down.
Okay, and they look slightly terrifying as somebody who goes out in the countryside and walks his dog, because they have these big horns and they're big beasts, but they're actually a very placid. Yeah. Are they quite an easy going animal to farm?
Yeah. No, they are. They'll come up to you in the field, which a cow won't.
Really?
And it's quite frightening sometimes, because if I go in there for whatever reason and you stand there and then you look around and you've got about 15 buffalo right behind you. Only once I was there with a journalist and we were sort of down lady like this, and one of the buffalo just took me like this and...
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just threw me. You know, whatever reason, I don't know. But
yeah, it is. I interviewed a chap called Tom Foote from the Open Air Dairy down in Devon. He had 850 cows, normal cows, out in the field, and I did get nuzzled between a Land Rover and his cows, and he literally just tickled them behind the ear. They were super friendly, happy, relaxed animals, probably partly due to the way that he was farming them.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think all animals, the better you treat them, the more placid they are and the more friendly they are.
Yeah. Okay. I read a little bit about you saying that Brexit might actually be a positive thing for the mozzarella industry, and then going into some kind of battle directly with the Italians on who makes the best mozzarella. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because it made me smile.
Yeah, so somebody came and interviewed me and said, well, we want to find out what the food you do is what's going to happen when there's Brexit. And I said, well, that's, we make at least as good as Italy. And we there the next day in the shop, and they take 4 or 5 days or before it's there. And so the head of Campania, where the best mozzarella is made, saw this, and he sent it through the press, and he said, oh, that guy, he's used to Grand Prix. We'll have the Grand Prix of mozzarella. And I loved that. And we started doing, I even got the little case that you take hearts and everything, so that the temperature was exactly right when we went down there. But we do a retail, and they do one that goes bad in 3 days. So it was a different product. But they helped us fantastically. They looked after us. It was brilliant.
Yeah. So you got there thinking it might, well, I don't know, going with the representing Britain or British mozzarella, but and actually it wasn't stupidly competitive. They actually opened the doors and were very hospitable and very friendly. Was that a surprise? Were you expecting that, or were you expecting it to be a little tense?
Listen, I wanted to win. That's all I wanted to do. I wasn't cared about that. But very pleasantly surprised that they looked after us so well.
Yeah, and then opened their doors to actually help and give some advice on the product.
They took me to different places where they're making mozzarella and places where they were doing milking their cows, so we could learn. It was brilliant.
It's awesome, that, isn't it? Because I think the press would like to do a kind of, we oppose each other and we're competitive and we don't get on. But in reality, it's human beings at the end of the day, isn't it? Behind the scenes of these businesses. Yeah,
I think they thought it was a good idea at the beginning, but I think they got a lot of flack from it, because if I went down and beat them, it's not very good for Italian mozzarella. Yeah. But we're a very small percentage of the market in this country. And some strange reason, we are expensive compared to the Italian mozzarella. I don't understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, why is that?
You've answered the question. I don't understand it, because they say their milk is more expensive than ours. And yet they get it here and cheaper. But maybe they're miles bigger than us.
I was going to say, is it purely scale, or?
I don't know.
You haven't answered that question yet.
I don't know. We battled to get contracts here. I mean, we at the moment, Pret was our biggest customer, right? And they stopped. They took it off the menu, right? And so we're only about 30% full now, our capacity, which is quite sad.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because it is an amazing product. I say we don't sell it at the moment, but we have done, and it is beautiful. But we'll come back to where people can buy it from. So pre the farming life, you're most famous, I would say, for 1979 Grand Prix Formula One winner. Was there stuff? I'm getting the kind of sense that I presume you have to be pretty obsessive to win in F1, and it's all about the details, and it's not just going out there and driving the car, and it's it's a team and all that. Was there stuff?
It's everything. When you wake up in the middle of the night, you are thinking about what can you do to go faster.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that I'm thinking about what you learned, I suppose, in those days, and you brought to farming. But I'm guessing that you probably just brought it to life. Were you always an obsessive, sort of all-in kind of character?
I was always a foodie. I was always a foodie and did a lot of exercise. Right. And so when I retired from that, I went to America and started a company making simulators to train police and military how to use guns.
I'm laughing because how do you go from F1, apart from the technical aspect, I suppose, why F1 to simulators?
I was living in Monaco and I saw this product that was made that they shot at a screen, so it was interacting with a movie. I thought, well, that's a great concept. A friend of mine in America said the police need a system because they have a little on the range, something that turns around like this. Ones are friendly and they shoot at that. And so we went there and there was a technician that was doing one with video. and a laser, and went there and did a deal with him and I get a prototype, and that's how it started. And 12 years later, we were in 35 different countries, had 95% of the world market.
That's amazing.
Last 3 years of 29, 60, $100 million sales.
Wow. Why?
I wasn't only shareholder.
Right, okay. And why was it Jody Scheckter that bought it? Because it seems like an obvious thing, a simulator for firearms and training. It seems like that would have happened, without you. Why did you have an impact on that made it so successful?
Well, I think what I learned from Formula One is they develop technology faster than any time, even faster than wartime.
Yeah.
So when I went over there, that was a natural, because I've been in workshops and doing technical development all my life. And so the step from there from racing to the simulators wasn't very big. It was developing technology as fast. So there were competitors, but we beat them all because we could develop something. There was an Israeli company that had something quite special and took it to a show. Looked at it. We developed it and had it in production before they did.
Wow.
Yeah. So that helped me. And the development of food has a lot of the same principles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm guessing you must have loved being an F1 driver. From the outside, it looks like a great fun thing to do. Did you?
Yeah, I think I try so hard that I think if you're enjoying it, you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
But that's, a lot of people are different, and they, what's the name? I just want to win.
Did you enjoy doing the simulators?
It was very exciting.
Was it?
Very exciting. I used to compare that to racing, and you say, well, how do you feel? I said, well, racing, everybody knows, and you can do well and bad within a lap, where you're great and then you're an idiot. And the company gives you same sort of satisfaction when you're doing well and it's all going well, but nobody knows except your shareholders.
Were the other drivers as obsessed as you? You seem to bring. I get the impression that whatever you did, and clearly whatever you do, you bring this kind of. I keep using the word obsession. I want to find a better one, but this kind of resilience and this never give up. Yeah, would you have brought that to anything? And were your peers the same, or is that why you won?
Well, I think they, they motivate themselves in different ways.
Right.
I've always been very bad if I do more than one thing.
Yeah.
And so I concentrate on one thing, and then nothing else matters. And that's the only way I can do it well. I mean, a lot of people can do a lot of things and do them quite well. I can't do that. Yeah. I'm dyslexic and whatever else, all the other weaknesses, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay. So you end up in the US. You build this incredible company with huge turnover. What takes you from that to a tiny little village in Hampshire?
I have an English wife, and she wanted to come back, so we sold the company and came back and bought 530 acres and said, "Okay, I'm going to produce the best tasting, healthiest food for myself and my wife." And then realised I've got to kill a cow, I've got to eat beef for 8 weeks. I'm not going to do that. Bought the farm next door, had all these brilliant ideas, and lost money for 15 years.
I read that. We'll come back to that. So literally in the early days, was it not going to be a commercial enterprise? I mean, 500 acres just to feed your family sounds like quite a lot, but was that the objective?
I didn't buy the land to feed the family. I bought the land and then started to look at what are the best lamb. What's the best tasting lamb, and what the best... Listen, apples I wanted from the early season to the late season, so I could pick a fresh apple all the time, and just went to extremes in every single way.
With the plan that was going to be a hobby rather than a business?
I started out just as a hobby. What is the best lamb? And it was Hebridean lamb, and so that sort of thing. But then, as I said, I realised I bought the farm next door 5 years later, and that's when it became commercial.
Okay, you bought it with the plan that it would be commercial.
Yes,
at that point you thought, right, let's do this as a living. I
had these massive ideas. I wanted to do cheese with 4 different animals and then 4 different types of cheeses. And I wanted to be big enough so I could have good cheesemakers. Didn't know anything about anything.
Yeah, it's dangerous, isn't it? I think having a bit of cash behind you, because most people have these crazy ideas and don't do anything, but you went and did it.
You say that. I used to say I'm lucky. I can do it to the most specialised way in the world, and it was, and it had diversification. But actually, you get the wrong culture in a company.
Yeah.
And I put the factories up, and I did this because I wanted to move fast.
Yeah.
And but there was money leaking everywhere, and it wasn't commercially. It was terrible. So when we altered about 4 years ago, I said it's got to stand on its own, and we changed it. And when we got more specialized products.
Okay, we'll come back to that because I'm interested in it. But was it straight away when you started? Was organic the thing, or did you just learn that basically organic tastes better? It started with I want the best product, and therefore organic is the solution, or did you always have that?
No, best tasting, healthiest food without a compromise is what we do,
right.
And organic was part of that.
Okay, it wasn't particularly linked to a environmental consideration, I suppose. It was literally I want the best product. Or...
No, you get it free. If you're trying to get the best food, best tasting, healthiest food, it's good for the environment.
Yeah.
So that's like free.
Okay. I think most people know organic, but you're also biodynamic. Is that correct? Can you just
biodynamic and more.
Okay. So what does that mean?
Well, biodynamic is a guy called Steiner in 1900 whatever it was. Felt that chemicals were bad. He did some lectures, and that became around the world a niche. Why did I go into biodynamics? Because they were real purists. Organic was coming where they wanted to do it for a grant or whatever it is, but biodynamic was the real passionate people that wanted to do the best. And so that's why I became biodynamic. Not on the whole farm. Our vineyard is biodynamic and some other selected places.
Okay. So in day-to-day management, what does that mean? Am I right in saying this is linked to the moon as well as soil? Is that
the
correct?
Moon actually is something that's been adapted over time. So
right.
It wasn't Steiner's.
But is that the case now? Does that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that science and people won't say. You could take a horn and you put manure in and you bury it in the ground and you use that as a put it in your compost teas and you spray it, and it's called preparations, and there's 5 preparations, I think. And so you've got to do all of those things. And people say, oh, no, that's rubbish, But I think just the passion of looking at the soil and watching your things so carefully is probably a big part of it. Yeah. Some people take that as a religion. Absolutely don't.
So you built a lab at one point, and you brought in the professor, chemistry kind of guys. Did they
both chemistry and biology? The doctor of chemistry, doctor in biology. The lab is still down there. We could not make it commercial.
Yeah.
And I did every enterprise I did on the company, on the farm, and was involved was standing on its own. That's where the tent was. It wasn't because I had to have the same technology and equipment to do it just for me or do it to become commercial. There's a lot of them that I couldn't make commercial and had to stop.
Right, shame. It feels like that sort of thing should be, government funded. But what sort of stuff were you finding out? What were they doing? And was the stuff that they were learning, could it have an impact on farming nationally, I suppose, rather than just you?
Well, biology in the soil is a big thing. There's Dr. Elaine Ingram. I went to lectures in America with her, and then eventually I got hold of her and we said I want to do a license. We were the only licensed lab in Europe,
right?
And there's just understanding what the biology does in the soil. And the chemistry was something that was there a long time ago, but they only looked at a few. So I looked at every element, 92 elements.
Wow. How long did you do that for? How long did you have the lab for?
The lab running for, I still got the lab. 8, 9, 10 years. No, probably more than that.
Oh, wow, long time. And were there some key findings that transformed what you did? Or?
The difference was we wanted to do development, but doing development and also making commercial at the time, and it wasn't commercial anyway, was very difficult. So it was mainly following what we had learned,
right?
But it's following nature.
Yeah. Whenever
we thought we had a problem with whatever, the chickens or whatever it is, how was it in nature? And then we'd follow nature. We follow, that's more than organic and everything else.
Yeah. There's a farm, Polyface Farm in America. Have you heard of Polyface?
Yeah. I had him here.
Did you?
I had a lecture. I had a friend. I've got his book down. He was the first. My wife gave him a book because I had a little farm in America. My wife gave me his book. I looked at it. It made a lot of sense. And he came and did a lecture in Atlanta. I went and said, hello. Anyway, when I got the farm, I got back hold of him, and I said, I've got this farm, I want to do this. So he said, okay. He got 8 guys from America and 7 guys from Europe that were the best in organic farming in different elements and ways. And so they came and we did a seminar here for I think 3 days. Wow. And the first day they said, each of them said what they did.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. And then the second day I would say, this is what I want to do. And they said, you stupid, it's too fast. It's all this. I got a tape, but they did a videotape of it. And they were right. I mean, we were too diverse.
Yeah.
But I felt that's what I wanted to do. And I did it to such an extent.
Yeah, I guess they were right from a commercial perspective, but not everything we do. I mean, it has to be commercial, I suppose. But most of the really good fun stuff you can do.
Well, I wanted to do it absolute. I didn't know anything about any of what I was doing, and the company in America was from a business point of view, was completely different. That was developing technology and selling.
Right.
I didn't even talk to accountants. Coming here, this is a more traditional type of, from a business point of view. So you have accountants, you've got to understand, and you got to understand at the end of the day, did you make a profit or not? Because the yield is everything.
Yeah, which is a shame that everything has to make a profit. But I guess the key thing I'm interested with the lab, I suppose, is that I'm looking out and you've got 2,000 acres of grounds. What can you learn, or did you learn anything in the lab that fundamentally changed, what you were doing on the land?
Well, we let's say we looked at what was developed before, Dr. Elaine Ingram on that, and we wanted to get ours to the best that it could be, the most biology, the most organic matter. Elliot Coleman is the guy that and his book's down there. I kept friendly with him. I've spoken to. He's come here several times and stuff. And he knew all around the world. He knew most of the organic purists at that time. Because in America, I went to a thing called Acres, and there was 3 days of lectures of soil, of grass health, of human health, and everything. And so we went there. That's where I've still got a lot of the tapes down there in the thing on what you got to do in nearly every element of farming and food production.
So I'm in awe at the amount of knowledge you must therefore have in your head, and what must be a frustration and a challenge of how can that be commercial?
What I had in my head. I can't remember anything anymore.
Yeah, but it feels like the British kind of farms need that knowledge and that information, and you've spent so much time and put so much effort into understanding firstly the problem and the history, and then what the solutions are. But I feel that we shouldn't waste that information. How do we get British farming to change so that it's no longer at the expense of nature, but it's in line with nature? That's a big question. But.
I wasn't trying to teach anybody. I don't try and teach anybody. I just did it for myself, to best tasting, healthiest food without a compromise. And that's the way I did it. Now, I thought that I could feed, half of the area up to London. And if I did this, even though it was a massive amount of capital, then that could become the let's say, the answer to farming, rather than paying farmers a lot of money each year. Commercially very difficult. No help from the government at all. We went to a lot of the universities and spoke to them. The problem is what they do is fight for money. So if we went there, because we were really a lab in ourselves, a proper lab. But when you went there, we'd do something, but we'd never get any money for it because they wanted the money to do the research.
It's incredibly frustrating, isn't it? I'm frustrated just listening to it. It must be frustrating for you. Did you speak to, I say the government, I don't even know where you start with that, but presumably DEFRA or somebody. Was there ever any interest in trying to understand the bigger picture? Because it feels like a problem that we should be trying to solve.
Yeah, we
not
were
just you on your own.
Yeah, but probably one of the things is I wanted to move fast.
Right.
And if you want a grant for something, I did get a grant for my compost site.
Yeah.
But if you want a grant, it's going to take you a year or a year and a half of lobbying and doing what? Oh, I couldn't wait that long.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned compost then, so you did learn some stuff that you've then put into practice with compost, have you?
Well, compost was part of what I absolutely learned. I mean, I was reading books from India, and I've got some of them down there. Don't ask me the names, but that was the first part of the English guy down there. For the first part of making these windrows and stuff like that. So I started studying that, and then with Elaine Ingram and all this stuff, studied making compost to grow the best.
Yeah.
The compost that they do here, they sterilize it. I mean, it's the regulations in compost in this country on this PAS 100 are the most stupid thing I've ever heard in my life.
Really? Because there's supposed to be something like more bacteria or organisms in a handful.
No, they don't want that.
Yeah.
What we have to send from 400 tons of compost, we have to send a sample to test the E. coli.
Right.
Now, we don't do that with food.
Yeah.
But we do that with compost, and it's ridiculous because it's out in the open, and you've got to take a piece of. You have to freeze it, or what's the name to try this? It's incredible. It's just mind blowing, and I've tried to do it, get them to change, but you're talking about that level. You can't. I had to do so much, and I thought, I'm not going to spend my months trying to lobby to get scientists, to get compost guys, could do all of that to try and change something like that. I just haven't got the time.
No,
I'm too
you
old
have to live for 200 years. I can see why you might want to go and live in a nice Italian villa on the coast in Italy, Jody. It sounds less stressful.
Well, I can tell you some other things.
But yeah, thanks for trying at least. So the compost you make then, is it different to the kind of general stuff? So even with those constraints, you can still make a great product.
Okay, the compost that we do is commercial. So we do have this PAS 100, and that's the only one you can do if you're getting green waste from the councils. When we do it, put it back on our farm, we then take it and enhance it and start getting the bacteria going and compost tea on it and turning it and doing and leaving it longer.
Okay, and you can only do that for your own land. You're not allowed to sell it, basically.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, shame, isn't it? But it does blow my mind the amount of bacteria and organisms in a handful of soil is literally, I know it's more than all the people on Earth.
People don't understand that. They think it's
ridiculous.
And I think it's mud. It's just dirt. It's not dirt. It is a handful of soil. It's got more living things than people on Earth.
Yeah, and like you
Good
say,
soil.
Every single thing we eat comes from it.
soil.
But yeah, the farming, and this isn't kind of like having a pop at the farmers, I suppose, because there's reasons why we came this way, and I guess off the back of the war and the need to feed a growing population, but it feels disappointing that we aren't learning fast enough. I think it was Guy Singh-Watson who said there was 40 cycles or something ridiculous left in the number of times we could continue to use soil before we completely destroy it, and that we need to be putting the work back into to making soil great again. God, that sounds like a tropism.
Yeah, commercial looks at soil completely different. They think, well, I've grown this, it took this much of that element, so we need to put that element back in. There's normally enough in most soils to grow a decent plant. But I sort of look back at, this was all sea at some time. There's all little shells and all sorts of things. At that time, people grew. The sea is the only product, let's say, or whatever it is, that has all the elements in it.
Right.
And so at some time we were taking seawater and then spraying that onto the crops because it had nearly every mineral and trace element. And we found, not a very good test, but we did with tomatoes, and we found that the taste was better.
Yeah, well, salt goes well with tomato, doesn't it? So I see. You've also got Angus Beef, is it? Aberdeen Angus cows, is that right?
That was a collector's item, let's say. I started with Shorthorn, so I bought some native Angus. Native Angus is the ones that haven't been crossed.
Right, and this is the difference, because I read that they're endangered, and then I thought I see Angus beef on menus a lot. So this is a different. This is a different thing. Basically,
I say they probably dated an Angus, 100 years ago.
Really?
The ones we have, I got short legs, flat back, a little. So what they did then is, how do we get more fillet? And so they'd cross it with a big animal, and all that sort of. So 99% of all Angus is Angus that has been crossed and crossed and crossed.
Okay.
But the ones we have are pure. We had 29. There were about 200 in the world. We had 29 breedy ones. We've cut back a little bit because trying to make everything work.
Yeah.
When I started to do these things, the best tasting healthy, you'd get an animal, let's say lamb, it is the best. There's no question. It's beautiful. You can't sell it because the people that it hasn't got the right size. It isn't that. So you got nothing for you couldn't even, you should have got a higher price because it's much, they don't have as many babies and all that thing, but you couldn't sell them.
Yeah, that's frustrating.
It's sad, it's sad.
Yeah. And that's the fault of the supermarkets, is it? Could you sell direct to the consumer through the farmers markets and stuff, or is that just...
Yeah, that's what you've got to do. But, in a mom and pop type of organization, I think you can do that, and you earning a living, although you probably earn for the hours you're earning a bad earning.
Less than minimum wage.
But I was bigger than that. Yeah. So farmers markets we did a lot of them.
Did you? And
could never make them work.
Right. Do you know Field and Flower, the meat by post guys?
Yeah.
Only in the fact that I guess they're similar. Guy rants equally as passionately about the difficulties with heritage, vegetables, and the fact that there's no market with them in the supermarkets. And the only way that he could do it commercially was to supply direct to the consumer, which he did through the boxes. And Field and Flower.
I had a box scheme, but that's logistics. It's not anything else. I did all of Abel and Cole's meat at one time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I interviewed the Field and Flower guys, and they whether there's any interest. You're still doing.
We supply Riverford with some, and we did supply a lot to Abel and Cole, and now we do supply a little bit more now.
Okay, so you've got a market at least. So some of the meat does go to
No, we don't do meat anymore. I closed the abattoir down. We could not make that work. That is a very, very difficult sector to be in. I always say if your grandfather wasn't in meat, you shouldn't go in meat.
Really?
And it's
Okay. Although unusual that you would build your own abattoir, I guess again that came in your.
But as I said earlier, I wanted to do every single element.
Yeah.
And so the abattoir is very important for the quality of meat.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's not enough of them. I speak to farmers who are frustrated by the lack of abattoirs and the regulation that goes into abattoirs. So you have one that's not in use now, do you?
Yeah, we're full multi-species, one of the best abattoirs in the country. Not big, but we did all species.
Right.
Temple Grundig was the expert on the leerage, so you don't stress. If you stress an animal bringing in before you kill it, the meat is bad.
Yeah.
And with Helen Browning,
yeah.
They brought some cows here.
Right.
They said it's the best meat we've ever had. Really? Because the way we went in there didn't stress them.
Yeah.
It was all built around with this lights and it's round so they don't feel captured. It's a very important part if you do it properly in getting good quality. So that was one of the elements. You start in the grass to the plate.
All the way through. Phenomenal, because very few people, I suppose, can, have the resources to try and do it. But it's disappointing to know that it's even with those resources, it's too hard to make viable.
When we started to look at doing an abattoir, I don't know if it was the government or the Hampshire or whatever, we're trying to do an abattoir here. And they were putting money into research and everything else. I built one. Yeah. I've never had any help from anybody on that. So I couldn't make it work. Really? I'd love to make it into a school. We used to have, I call them disinfected students, come here once a week, and they on our land. And in fact, my farm manager, that's how he started. He used to come here once a week as a bad student,
right? And
they loved it. And then he came and did some stuff on the weekends, and then he worked for us full time. And I made him he was 24. I made him my farm manager.
Amazing. And I love our sector, and I say our sector just generally around food and drink, in the fact that you don't need to be an academic, you don't need to sit behind a computer. Up in London, we should be encouraging those kind of the creative sector, I suppose. Do you do much of that?
Well, the problem with all this, a lot of the rules, it is done, like you said, in London. They don't really understand the practical part of it. They put these regulations in, and even the EU regulations. England follows them. Forget about it in Italy.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's come up before. Yeah, we agree to a rule and employ 100 people to enforce it, whereas France might agree to a rule and then don't employ anybody to enforce it.
That's the allegation. I mean, the mozzarella place we went on, the thermometers was all wood, and they were putting it in. Here, if you have wood in the factory, the pallet, which only pops in a little bit so we can put it on, you can't do that.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? Why is that the case?
It's more it's the theoretical way where the Italians say, listen, they've been making it for 100 years. They do this. They know what they're doing, and I think that's. When I went out and did my search, I went to 8 different factories and parlours. Yeah. Only 1 were in whites. Really? And my conclusion was, how do you make good mozzarella? You've got to have a fag like this when you're making the what's name.
Yeah, that authenticity is key, I suppose. You also diversified into hops, started making beer and vineyards. Are you still doing that, or was that part of the stuff that you've had?
Yeah, we 18 acres of hops down there to do beer.
Making your own or supplying?
No, we're going to put a brewery up there, but we use another brewery. And they make it for us. We do the barley and hops for them. Again, it's such a different sector. We can't make it, and we haven't made it to work commercially.
Okay, and same with vineyard. Did you do
sparkling wine? I've got a vineyard. Yeah.
Have you? Good.
Well, if you want the most grapes we had were 10 tons.
Right.
And then we had the good weather. 2 years ago?
2 years ago, yeah.
32 tons.
Wow.
Now we're going to be fantastic, We're going to, because 10 tons you can't make a profit. It costs you 150, 170,000 pounds to monitor, to do the cutting the plants, do the trimming and stuff like that. This year we were blown out with disease.
Wow,
so,
really?
so we have 0. So we had that cost. So it's tough.
Did you build your own winery to produce it as well? Or no, you were outsourcing.
I had planning permission.
That was lucky.
I had planning permission to do the winery over there. It's a beautiful thing, coming out of the ground and everything like this. And thank goodness I didn't do it.
Okay. Do you use somebody else? I interviewed Hattingley. Do you know Hattingley?
Yeah. We use Hattingley at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I interviewed the boss of that, and he was saying that was going to be the next challenge. Actually, was the number of wineries, because more and more people were producing the grapes, but not necessarily building a winery due to the level of expense.
He's done it fantastically, and I think commercially, and he's gone into it. That's the only thing he does.
Yeah, absolutely. And do one thing really well.
That's what was my problem. I needed an entrepreneur for every sector I was doing.
Yeah, really.
It's hard enough getting a manager, but getting an entrepreneur was impossible. I thought that I could do it.
Sounds like you were close. You were so close to pulling off. Have you ever done flour? You ever tried milling? I'm trying.
We were going to put up a restaurant and a farm shop and do cheeses with Bombay Sapphire in those grounds. They gave us 2 buildings that we could do that in, and that was going to be part of it. I was going to have the grinding machine in there. We're going to do the whole process.
Because that's another thing that there's a shortage of. Stoats Flour, interviewed them, and we used to stone grind flour, and that's what keeps the endosperm in it, and you get all the oils and the proper stuff. Flour now that lasts 2 years on the shelf has got no nutritional value whatsoever. But apparently it's the kind of traditional stone grinding mills that are the issue. The demand is there, but most of the new milling places are all drums and air blown, and they take out all the nutrition. Don't build one on the basis of this conversation, please.
No, I looked at it. I looked at all of it. We're going to do that, and we're going to do the grinding of it with the stone and do all of that. But the funny thing is that bread that my chef makes now, it doesn't do anything that's very special, but It's beautiful.
Yeah, he probably uses good flour, though, I imagine.
Yes, they always said it was French flour was the only flour that made good bread.
Yeah.
He doesn't use French.
No, it's just good flour, I think, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you went on this, phenomenally impressive but crazy adventure of building all of this stuff, and hats off to you. And I wish the government, funded you, because there's clearly so much knowledge in there. But there was a trigger a few years ago, was there, where you said, right, actually, this has got to stand on its own 2 feet.
What I say is, I was rich and stupid. Now I'm clever and poor.
Right.
It's all relative, of course.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. So was there a particular trigger point where you went, right, I'm going to stop getting bigger and start getting better? And I don't mean better from actually, I love everything you built, but better from a long-term commerciality perspective.
Yeah, I was running out of money.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Simple as that.
So I had to. So I had to do something that would change it to become. So the things that weren't working or wouldn't work in the short term, I started cutting them out.
Right.
I had to do that.
So you've gone from 130 odd staff down to 50 odd, is that
180
correct?
We had 180 staff. We got 55 now, more or less 55.
Okay. Stopped doing some of the periphery stuff. So your main thing now is
and from a commercial, the farm was producing products for my products for my products that we make.
Yeah.
So it was small quantity, and that's one of the difficulties in trying to make it work. Now the farm is now much more a normal farm, except for the buffalo. Yeah. And we made a profit on the farm 3 years ago.
Did you?
For the first time.
So you've scaled back. So what's your main products now then? What's your core range? You went from 120 in Ocado, you said. How many have you got now?
So we got the beer, we got the sparkling wine, and we've got the mozzarella, which is the main product, and the ice cream. Right. Those are our main products, really. And you mainly sell to the retailers, or mainly to restaurants? To distributors. I mean, Pret was our biggest customer before they took it off the menu, but restaurants. We had 5 trucks, and we're delivering directly. Couldn't make that work, so now we go through distributors. Right. Okay, so you've been, and specifically farming more than your previous careers, I guess, you've been on this phenomenal adventure, like you say, learnt so much. Is there a particular element of it that you're the most proud of? Because there sounds like there's some bits that you beat yourself up for and going, I shouldn't have done that. But what's the bit that you still go, yes, I'm bloody pleased I did that? I have prizes for nearly every product we had. Right. So we made very good products as we went along. But it didn't work commercially. So then changing it from a loss making and a lot of loss into a profit was something that I had to do. Yeah. Because I should have stopped 10 years ago and gone to the beach. But so that's, I feel a bit proud because I've not only done those products, but now it's a commercial enterprise that works. Yeah. Pleased you did it? Yeah, I have no regrets. The regret maybe is that I stopped 10 years ago. I would have liked to have made it like I have now 10 years ago. Yeah. But a phenomenal amount of knowledge that you've acquired. Yes, in the meantime. I've met lovely people and on the way, there's no question. And a whole knowledge of a whole different thing. I mean, all my 3 careers have been completely different. Hugely, So, but all taken to the ultimate extreme of changes. Yeah. So I'm really hoping that we are, whilst nervous. In fact, I think it was Guyson Watson again who said things are both getting worse and better at the same time. So there's the intensive farming continues its trajectory, but hopefully the more sort of boutique-y, knowledge-orientated space is changing. So I'm an optimist. So I like to think that it's changing, but I'm going to guess it either needs some sort of transformational knowledge change in a decent sector of the size of people who maybe have been farming for multi-generation, or it's going to need new people to come into the industry. Is there any advice you would either give the new person coming in, which isn't hopefully run for the hills and don't do it, or any advice that you would give the rest of the farming sector based, I suppose, on doing things the right way, but as you've said, at some point it's got to be commercial as well. It depends what you're trying to do. If you're doing a farm for a business point of view, then it's different. If you're doing it from a product, I was trying to have a brand. You know, so it was different, and it was a big idea with all these different products, and so it was too big an idea if you wanted to say it like that. So there's so many different ones. You can have small, really niche type of that's more mom and pop, and then you have the commercial that is how much can we do in its only volume. It's got to be a balance of the both.
Yeah. Okay. You're still interested in cars?
Yeah, I like driving cars. I've got 12 of my cars that I raced.
Yeah.
But road cars, I have a Mercedes and love them, and I like the new ones. I don't like the old ones actually. When they come out with this new whatever it is, they improve cars every year massively.
Yeah. You own the Ferrari that you won in 79, is that right? My dad, I texted my dad this morning, he's a big F1 fan, and said I was going to see you any questions, and his question was, where's the car? And I said, I think I can answer that one already. Because Carfest is something that you're also involved with. Yeah. Was that from sort of an interest in cars, or was that the need to diversify?
No, I met Chris Evans at actually James Martin's. They were at a dinner there.
Not when he made the plum mozzarella dish.
No. I think that was before. Yeah, it was before.
Okay.
That. And he said, I want to do this family festival. And so, well, you could do it on Laverstoke. And Monday morning he announced it.
Really?
And that's how it all started. And I think it's the 8th year now, £1.5 million for charity each year.
That's incredible, isn't it?
And we don't run it. We just lend them the farm as part of the charity.
Right. Do you enjoy it? You get involved, presumably?
Yeah, I think much more now than I did at the beginning.
Yeah.
When I was trying to make, take advantage or try and get our products out there, and we cooked a whole animal on a spit, a buffalo on a spit, wow, and did all sorts of things. But now we have our own area, our own hospitality area, where we bring our customers and our friends and stuff like that. And that's nice. And I love taking people around the track. Mercedes lend me some of their very special cars, and I try and frighten everybody, taking them around the track, and that's fun for me.
That's awesome. Is this a track you built, or?
Well, it started as we went down the farm road and back, and then we wanted to make it more, so we went through the compost site.
Really?
Yeah, we opened all the compost up, and you had to go through there, and they then said, no, that doesn't work for us, and it stopped our compost being made for a big period of time. It was very expensive to do, so they said, well, we'll change the farm roads a little bit, and so yes, I have a lovely little track.
Excellent. I've got images now. Do you get to go and take your car? Your car's based here. Do you get to go and have a play with them on the track? Or?
No, I've had the idea that we'll come on a weekend and get some friends and all that, but I haven't really done it.
That sounds like way more fun than taking on the government and trying to get them to understand the biology of soil on behalf of British farming. Jody.
No, I mean, in a road car, it's lovely. But and this year we organised the Grand Prix cars from 1904 to 92. And display, because the racing side of the cars that they had were not very good at all, so we took it over, and because they have cars that are beds, 45% children.
Yeah.
So it's so diverse. Yeah. It's a brilliant event from a family point of view, and you can't do everything in one day.
Yeah. No, I need to come. I've got friends who've come, and everybody I've spoken to, nothing but positive stuff to say about it. So
the police didn't even come this last time.
That's brilliant.
My wife used to get the police to do a dance on the stage.
Yeah.
But there's so little problems that they didn't even come.
Yeah, exciting.
Yeah, it's an event with 28,000 people.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brilliant. It was because people are all mostly got their kids there, so they just talk to each other, and that's the atmosphere is brilliant.
Yeah, just a nice vibe, and raises a heap of cash.
Yeah.
So coming towards a close, Jody, but out of everything you do, what now gives you the most pleasure and gets you excited in the morning to get out of bed?
Going to the beach.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. I've worked so hard in my life going to all the 3 different things that I've done. So I want to just relax and enjoy myself now.
I think you've earned it. I'm glad you said that. I think it's exhausting just listening to the amount of love and passion you've put into what you do. These are beaches in hotter countries. Clearly not Bournemouth. You've not been to my restaurant.
I got a little place in South Africa on the beach,
nice.
And then I've just got a little place in Italy on the sea.
Yeah, beautiful. Can people who are listening who want to buy the product? I mean, we're the Humans of Hospitality, so much of it is sort of the bar and restaurant trade, which I guess is through wholesalers. But do you supply directly to the consumer?
Ocado and Waitrose.
Okay,
that's our big customers from a retail point of view.
Okay, you can't purchase directly on your website, or?
No, we used to have that.
Yeah. Logistically challenging. One of the things you cut back to.
I mean, it's if you're doing high volume and you're doing it very efficiently, that's great. But Ocado did it so well. Yeah. So we said eventually let them do it. We thought we can make more profit because you're direct. But you've got to. That's another whole business doing a mail order.
Yeah, I need to learn from you. We did the same at a much smaller scale, but just thinking in the winter. So my restaurant's on the beach, and in the winter it's hard to get people to come to the beach to the restaurant. And we thought, we'll take food to the people rather than people to the food. So we'll do a takeaway, and then what travels well. Funny enough, pizza. So we thought, right, we'll do really good quality British ingredients, but we'll go and learn about traditional Italian pizza and the flour they use and what makes an amazing base. And then we said, right, we'll deliver it ourselves. And I bought a car and I bought a couple of scooters and stuff. And just the logistics on that level of working out that at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night you need about 40 cars and people, but the rest of the week you need less than one. Yeah. And the complexity it's
Uber,
just bonkers.
You should have got Uber.
Well, now we do. Now we use Deliveroo and Uber and the price of that.
When I started my box scheme, I said, we're selling 300 or 400 boxes a week. Wow. Yeah. I said, why don't we get a salesperson? We'll put a salesperson on. You work it out. You've got to do 2,000 boxes to just pay for your salary.
It's bonkers, isn't it? Yeah. It's hard. Well, look, thank you for sparing the time, Jody. It's been fascinating. Good luck. I'll continue to watch with interest. Your products are amazing. My chefs love them, and I know lots of other chefs do. So
thank you.
Yeah, keep going. Keep the obsession alive. Thank you. Good luck with whatever comes next.
It sounds like you got the same disease as me.
I do too, but luckily. Luckily with a smaller budget, although it's all relative. I think I've probably spent an equally unaffordable amount of money on ideas. Yeah. But it's good fun. I think life is for learning and smiling, and hospitality's an enjoyable industry to do it in, I think, isn't it? So thank you, Jody.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast, and remember that on the website humansofhospitality.co.uk every week we put on some show notes and some links through to the various websites or social media that are mentioned, and we also do a nice little breakdown of that week's conversations into specific topics, so you can jump through the podcast and just listen to some of the highlights if you wish. If you've not done so already, if you could leave us a review on iTunes or one of the other podcast players of your choice, that would be hugely appreciated. Thank you so much, and we'll be out with another episode next Monday.